For those who watch Jason Black, for many of you, that's pretty much a lot of you who are subscribed to me, knows that he has this very famous saying, you gotta watch out for these old niggas. And while I'm not saying it as intensely as he is, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hold any less weight. And that brings me to this old nigga right here by the name of Bob Woodson, who, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know who this man was until today, until someone had tagged me in this, and I had to, respectfully have to talk about this man in probably a damn near disrespectful tone. So this man, Bob Woodson, he was a civil rights activist, and he went on Dr. Phil. Yep, that Dr. Phil, where the topic of reparations came up. And do you think that he spoke in support of it? If your answer was no, congratulations, you get the little gold star. I already had a problem with him going to Dr. Phil to even talk about this. But it's what he said that's going to make us want to check his paperwork. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this article, which is actually coming off of the Dr. Phil website. Should reparations be given to Black Americans? Some people claim that the way to solve the huge disparities in races caused by Black enslavement in America is to pay compensation in the form of money, homes, or land to address the harm. However, some critics say today's generation shouldn't have to pay for something they didn't do. Now, that's pretty much giving you an overview of what you're about to hear him say, what he's been quoted as saying. And it sounds awfully a lot like what PC loves to say. So I'm sure PC is eating this up if they are aware of who this guy is. They probably didn't even know who this guy was up until that time that they saw this, just like I'm not aware who this man was until just now. Bob Woodson, civil rights activist and author of Red, White, and Black, Rescuing American History from Revisionists and Race Hustlers. The title of that book alone just screams that this man is like a buck dancing buffoon. And Lessons from the Least of These says he does not support reparations. He's quoted as saying, when you go into slavery, it's much more complex than white people were the oppressors and Black people were the victims, Woodson says, adding that there were 3,700 free Blacks who owned 12,000 Black slaves. Blacks really benefited more than the first 100 years after slavery than we have in the last 50 years. This is a talking point that I've always hated when they talk about Black people or Black free slaves own Black people. They only limit it to that they owned them and treated them as if or how the white slave owners did. No, the reason why they did that is because they were buying back their family's freedom so they can get their family back. They always leave that part out. I wonder, Bob, was your book inspired by Thomas Sowell? Something just tells me that he's a Thomas Sowell supporter. Because this sounds like a talking point that he has. Thomas Sowell is like the magical Negro to white people. I think Thomas Sowell might eclipse MLK for them, for those that know of him. Woodson says Americans must look beyond solutions, saying that Blacks only benefit if whites lose. He goes on saying, we have to be defined more than just victims of oppression. Woodson continues, when whites were at their worst, Blacks were at their best. What the fuck? And I didn't even mean to cuss, but what the fuck is this old dirtbag talking about? Like, is he okay in the head? He's pulling shit literally out of his ass. Like, what the hell is he talking about? This is the shit that gets me annoyed. My intelligence has been insulted just now. Every quote that he said makes not one damn lick of sense to me. Of course, it doesn't make sense to the people who don't like it either, but they'll agree with it because they don't want Black people to have it either. See, they know exactly who to go and pluck from the peanut gallery and put in front of certain people and platforms so they can spew this bullshit as if it's the gospel truth. They wouldn't come to talk to anybody like us, and they know that because they've heard us, but they don't need anyone to in a way, rock the boat. So let's go get one of them and do it like, and have them be the mouthpiece. He says in the video above, and I'm not even going to play it because it actually does come with a video with him. You can actually hear what he's saying, but I'm not even going to waste my time with that. He said in the video above, hear what Woodson says he believes needs to happen to help Black Americans. And Ashani Mfuko, an anti-fascist educator and activist, explains why she disagrees. On Tuesday's episode of Dr. Phil, Should We Allow Reparations to Black Americans? Dr. Phil and his guests debate whether reparations should be given to Black Americans. You know what? I might actually play that because I want to see what other dumb shit he had to say. So hold on right quick.
You say you don't support reparations. Why not?
Not everybody suffered equally. I mean, when you go into slavery, it's much more complex than all white people were the oppressors and Black people were the victims. If you dissect it, you will find there were about 3,700 free Blacks who owned 12,000 slaves. Black slaves. The question is, do the descendants of those free Blacks who owned Black slaves, do they pay? Blacks really benefited more in the first 100 years after slavery we have in the last 50 years. I was born in 1937 during the Depression. Everyone in my small, low-income Black community, 98% of the households had a man and a woman raising children. Elderly people could walk safely in that community without fear of being assaulted by their grandchildren. Never heard a gunfire during that time. Never heard of a child being shot to death in the crib. But there are 50 children today who have been shot and killed in our cities. If you talk about remedies, we've got to look beyond.
Now look what he just did there. This man literally, y'all already heard what I read, like about the 3,700 and 12,000. I think there's some jump cuts in here as well. They edited down for like time. But this man literally subliminally brought up so-called black on black crime and is trying to link it back to why he believes that we shouldn't get it. And then he was saying, well, do the descendants of those who were owned by Black people as slaves, do they get a cut? Yes, you dumbass. They were still... This guy said he was born in 1937. Keep in mind, I have an ongoing Black massacre series going on right now on my channel. I'm willing to bet that his ancestors are from within that realm of era, I should say, that is encompassed in that series. And many of them were born either right as slavery was ending or probably at the tail or within the last couple of years of slavery before it ended. And you hear how he's talking right now. And I don't know what his lineage is, but let's hypothetically say that he is FBA. Those checks get cut. We gonna keep him in mind. We getting his shit.
Saying that every solution has to have a winner and a loser. That Blacks can benefit if whites lose. We have to be defined more than just victims of oppression. When
he said that just screamed to me he already has a loser mindset. He has a not just merely a loser mindset, but a defeated one. This man is already defeated. As far as I'm concerned, he's taking up space.
We're at their worst. Blacks are at their best. When we were denied access to hotels, we built our own. We have to communicate to our people the history of how they achieved in the face of oppression. But if we continue to sit back and say all of the challenges that we face in out of wedlock bursts of violence, that somehow the control of that is in the hands of white America, and therefore until white people change, there's nothing that we can do. This sets up a terrible situation for this nation. The big crisis.
Like you literally was trying to explain white supremacy. He gave a placebo defining of it, by the way. This guy literally is going by and literally listing off reasons why we would need and deserve reparations, but he's sitting there also opposing it. Like, did you not take your Ovaltine shot this morning before you got on this show? But like I said, they know who to call because these people are screened before they get on these shows. They screen them. They already know what they're about before they get on there.
Facing America is not racial. It is a moral and spiritual freefall that is consuming our children. The highest death rate among black families is homicide. Among Silicon Valley, the highest level of
hold on, let me run that back again because I want y'all to hear that.
Death rate among black families is homicide.
I just wanted to pause that right quick and make sure that I wasn't hearing things. He said the highest form of death among black families is homicide. The leading cause of death for black people is heart disease, cancer, and stroke. Where the hell does homicide come from? Hello? I just had to pause it right quick because I was like, that just sounds incorrect. But I wanted to be sure, and I wanted to go and look it up just to be sure. And also to keep it going, I saw another place under the CDC that says the number one form is heart disease, then cancer, then Alzheimer's disease, stroke. Homicide comes at number 5. And he said right there on that show and lied and said that the highest form of death for black people, black families, is homicide, when that's the 5th leading cause. I just wanted to throw that in there. Now I can get back into the bullshit.
Among Silicon Valley, the highest level of suicide, 6 times the national average. In Appalachia, prescription drugs. And so if we are to address this crisis that is causing our children to lack a sense of personal responsibility or value for their own life, they will take their own life or take someone else's. So in order to address that, we must come together and look beyond race and realize America is drowning because it's in a moral and spiritual freefall. None of us should be defined by the worst of what we were in the past, but we should be defined by what we want to become in the future. And that people are motivated to change when you give them a vision of victories that are possible, not constantly reminding them of injuries to be avoided.
I think it's not either or. I think it's and. I think we can do both. We cannot ignore the reality of systemic racism and how it's affected the black community. You can't just be like, we need to just focus on our own issues. The violence is happening in the black community. It's the black people's fault, and we need to focus on that. Actually, it's a lot of things. So we can't just separate them and be like, just focus on yourselves. Don't worry about racism. It's finding us. It finds us wherever we go. It's not our fault, right? So what you're saying is we need to focus our issues on ourselves and not wait for this. No, we can do both. We can get reparations and we can work on issues within our community as we have always been doing. But we need to start removing the barriers that are there that shouldn't be there. It shouldn't even be there in the first place.
Let me just say the problem with generalizing about any group and then trying to apply remedies to that group, it always benefits those at the top. Just like in the middle of the Me Too movement. Oh, women. You cannot generalize about blacks, women, or anybody. And if you do, let's just take women. So what is it? Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby get arrested. Right in the middle of the Me Too movement, there was a 2-hour documentary about women being raped in our prisons. For 2 hours, every one of the victims was a black woman. Every one of the villains was a black guard and a black officer. It did not generate any debate or discussion.
Now you see what else he did there. He now implemented Me Too into this and was saying that it was black women that was violated in these prisons and that the person who did it was a black guard. So listen to what this man is doing. This guy literally is an agent for white supremacy. He is. I'm so glad I have the opportunity to get on here day in and day out and call this bullshit out. Because for many of you did not know this man existed. Y'all didn't even know this clip existed or what he had to say. And you know what? I'm glad I said I wasn't going to listen to the whole, play this audio in the beginning. I'm glad I changed my mind. That way we can get a full scope of this individual's mindset. And it's very, 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 very limited.
It did not fit the racial narrative. In other words, the only time that we can become upset is when evil wears a white face.
I disagree.
See, there you go. So basically what he said right there at the end is that he wants black people to be the villain. You know, a lot of times when they say black people need to take accountability for this, they need to take accountability for that, they want them to be the number one villain in every facet of life that you can be a villain in. If they could put a black face on every crime statistic on the FBI crimes list that comes out, oh, they surely would. And they wish they could. They are upset that black people seemingly are at the top of only one of those lists, and by a very small margin. And they love to praise that as if it's a 20% gap when it's like less than 10% of a gap between black and white people who fall into the, I believe it's the murder rate part. But white people overwhelmingly eclipse every other category. But yeah. And oh, by the way, what I find to be fascinating is that the woman who interjected and spoke, her name is Ashani Mfuko. Now, you can just tell by that name that she's non-FBA. But this woman was more on code than he was. That's why I say, hypothetically speaking, let's say he is FBA. She was more on code with what he should have said, and you would expect what he said to come out of her mouth. Now, she doesn't qualify for reparations based on her lineage. And she spoke like she did. This guy most likely does qualify, and he spoke like he does not. Like Jason Black has always said, you got to watch out for these old niggas. And this is another one. So in case people just got introduced to Bob Woodson today, there you go.